all doing? Short video here today. It is kind of a companion video for a deep dive into a debate over 600 years old. That one is going out on the Maniakes channel. Yep, I am talking about whether medieval Romaioi were living somewhere different than Roma Imperialis. Because after Justinian, the Great, the state would say Basilico, Roma. This as Greek became the official language of governance. Let's talk about the migration of Roman citizens to Constantinople and what it means for the Roman identity. First, it's important to understand that after the Constitutio Antoniana of 212 AD, Roman citizenship was granted broadly across the empire. This expanded what it meant to be Roman. It wasn't just about living in the city of Rome anymore. Being Roman became a legal and cultural identity shared by people throughout the provinces. Fast forward about a century, and we see the founding of Constantinople by Constantine the Great. This new capital began to attract an influx of Roman elites, valued for their prestige and administrative expertise. Over the years, between Constantine's time and the end of the Gothic Wars, tens of thousands of Latin-speaking Romans settled in Constantinople. However, as the city and the empire evolved, these Romans gradually adopted the Greek language, just like the rest of the population in the East. But this migration wasn't limited to elites. Hundreds of thousands of Roman citizens from all classes, whether from Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt, Greece, or the Balkans, also made Constantinople their home. By law, and in their own identification, they were Romans, or as they called themselves in Greek, Romaioi. They weren't foreigners. They were simply moving from one part of the empire to another. It's a bit like Irish Americans today. They're still Irish, but they're also part of a larger identity. The same goes for the Romans of Constantinople. Now here's an interesting aside. The Romans claimed lineage all the way back to the Trojans. The legendary founder of Rome, Aeneas, was said to have fled Troy after its fall and established the roots of what would later become Roman civilization. And here's the twist. Troy was located incredibly close to Constantinople. Whether the lineage was real or more mythological, the idea reinforced that the Romans didn't see themselves as foreign to the region. In their minds, settling Constantinople wasn't a break from tradition. It was a homecoming. This brings us to continuity. The Eastern Roman Empire, centered in Constantinople, was a direct continuation of the Roman state. It kept Roman administrative systems, though they evolved into the famous theme system, preserved Roman law through works like the Corpus Juris Civilis, and maintained the Roman identity, which permeated every level of society. Now contrast this with the city of Rome itself. After the fall of the Western administration, the Gothic Wars, and the end of imperial subsidies like the grain dole, Rome's population declined dramatically. While it retained symbolic and religious importance, especially through the papacy, its connection to the broader Roman world, and the thriving Romaioi in the East grew weaker over time. By the medieval period, the population of Rome was effectively New Romans, a sharp contrast to the continuity seen in the East. So here's the takeaway. The Eastern Roman Empire, with Constantinople at its heart, was the true continuation of the Roman state. It was populated by citizens who identified as Romans, powered by the empire's vibrant eastern provinces, and maintained its Roman identity until the upheaval of the Fourth Crusade in 1204. To address the retaking of Constantinople by the Palaiologos dynasty, whom prior to the recapture of the once magnificent Jubilee capital Constantinople in 1261 ruled what is known as the Empire of Nicaea. Though Nicaea was a Roman state and a true successor, one can argue that the continuity of the Roma Imperialis had ended. The city was gutted of its antiquity. This includes vast amounts of knowledge, Roman statues, and art. Most of the non-religious buildings, even including the traditional palace of the emperor, were out of use. Many churches as well were also in total disrepair. This as the population remained but a shadow of the empire's past. Constantinople during its twilight would be populated by new Byzantines, as was Rome after the Gothic Wars. Think of how Bostonian specifically identifies someone from the city of Boston, while their national identity is American. Similarly, during the time of the Eastern Roman Empire, the term Byzantios, from which we get Byzantine, was almost exclusively a local identifier for an inhabitant of the capital city, Constantinople. It wasn't a label for the empire's people as a whole. Their shared political and cultural identity, whether living in Constantinople or elsewhere in the empire, was Roman. The term Byzantine Empire itself is a much later historical convention, not used by the Romans themselves, though the Romaioi would take back Constantinople after a half-century. The re-emergence of the state was in name only. This would be better characterized as the re-emergence of the Roman people through a series of rump states. Constantinople, by the middle of the 15th century, was effectively a city-state. The Queen City and her holdings in the Morea, Thessaloniki prior to 1440, and Aegean Islands seemed more akin to an imperial confederation. The empire had close ties, but no longer any political continuity with late medieval states such as Trebizond.